It's been a long time. How many years do you think?
I hate to count.
Yeah.
But good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We should do a film.
You know, I think, it'd be interesting for people to hear about how the film was prepped, because we had done Outsiders and we went right into Rumblefish.
We had like 2 weeks, right, between the two films?
When did you find out that we were going to do Rumblefish?
I kind of found out when I was packing to get out of Tulsa and go back to LA. I was ready to go back to California. And then we got the news, we're going to do another film, same group, we're just going to stay on for a few more months and do another film. Francis usually kind of confides in me about the plans down the pike, and I was very surprised about this. Apparently he was writing the script on Sundays. There was no script floating around while we were shooting The Outsiders. Did you get a script?
As I remember it, Francis called me in, he told me about the movie. He says, "What would you like to do?" And I said, Francis, I'd like to do a picture in black and white, because probably during the rest of my career, I'll never get to do a black and white picture, because black and white was dying out. And he goes, "Me too." And I was like shocked. And I had shot a lot of black and white when I was in school. So that's why I was keen on doing it, because I was so frustrated shooting color movies, because you would get a wonderful work print and you get a wonderful kind of final print, and then they would do the release and they would just run it through the bath really fast and everything was destroyed. It just drive me nuts. And I really enjoyed doing it. It was the only black and white picture
yeah, me too.
Got to do. The Outsiders was supposed to be Gone with the Wind. It was very warm and very romantic.
Big screen.
And big frame, beautiful kind of
big music,
classic kind of compositions. And Rumblefish was just the complete opposite of that. And so there was that contrast going.
Thinking about black and white, all the films that were made in black and white, I always wondered how they knew exactly what they were going to get on the screen, because they didn't work in black and white. They worked in color. So they put yellow here or blue there. What did these colors look like on black and white stock? I had boards made with basic a palette of colors, a spectrum of colors.
Filter tests. I shot filter tests too.
Yeah. And to see what red looked like in black and white, different shades of gray. Well, I assume that grays would come out grays, but how colors looked when transformed into black and white. That was one of the things I was involved with.
Yeah, I always thought the big deal with black and white was that it's always the separation. Because if you use a pastel blue and a pastel green, black and white, they're going to look the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what you have to do is you have to grade them. And when I was going to school, they would take us over to Fox, and they used to have these great big books that had paint samples in them. And the art department had figured out how all those colors reproduced on black and white film. And so they had a real
They had it down because that was their daily menu, black and white. Yeah, for us it was a new world.
Francis had like an elementary school that had been all abandoned, and the Tulsa people let us use it.
The school was a great layout for a movie company.
I thought it was really wonderful that we all got together and we did the electronic blackboard situation. Your brother Alex would draw on the blackboard what we were talking about, and we talked the whole picture through. you know, with such short prep, it was good that we all kind of said what we thought, you know, it should be. You know, Francis had that system where he would do a reading that would be like a radio program to listen to the dialogue.
Biff is looking for you, Rusty James.
I ain't hiding.
He says he's gonna kill you.
Saying ain't doing.
Biff's a mean cat, Rusty James.
And then Alex drew a picture of Benny's pool hall, because we didn't have the sets. The actors would do the scene in front of green screen, and then they'd be matted together. It was this ultra mat, it was called. And so you could see how the scene played.
Francis would do these extensive rehearsals and really hone everything down. And I think that's the reason for the electronic cinema, was to try and get it honed down and fine-tuned before he shot it, you know, so you didn't have to go back and reshoot it or change a scene.
Well, it's a very valid way to do it.
Because of body language, because Emil Jennings starts out, he's very proud and he's very erect and everything else. And when he loses his job, he starts to hunch over, and he wanted the actors to understand how to use body language as part of their character. And one of the films that we also saw was a picture called Decision Before Dawn.
Yeah, I don't get that. Why?
Because that was the wasteland. That was shot in Germany after the Second World War. And
So this kind of
yeah,
devastation.
and so that was the wasteland reference.
Tulsa really yielded a great mother lode of locations. Apparently there was some terrible race riot there.
Oh yeah.
Half the city was destroyed. Where we had the big party at night, those were all totally abandoned buildings. We put glass in the windows just to get reflection so they didn't look like holes. And of course all the neon and lights. But those empty streets, that's all that was left of that part of the town.
That was the black section of town, and it had all been burned out.
Yep.
I want to talk about the strip a little bit, because there's another thing you did that was really good, was that you had the street that was like this, and you had the freeway at one end and nothing at the other end. And the freeway was supposed to look like the continuation of the bridge that was going. And then on the other end, you put all those carnival lights. So there was a background on every direction. The carnival lights were very clever because it didn't cost a lot of money to do, and we were under terrific pressure to do it as inexpensively as possible. I thought that was really great too. I was amazed when you did that. I went, boy, this is really good.
But I loved those streets that went nowhere. It gave a kind of an apprehension to the film, as well as the shadows and the clouds. It really reinforced this very uneasy feeling. And the painted shadows. Well, the painted shadows, of course, you think of the German expressionist films, Dr. Caligari, that had those very severe painted shadows. But I always wanted to paint shadows. On the film prior to this, Hammett, that Wim Wenders was doing, I believe I talked to Wim about shadows. He, being a German, of course he knew all about. I said, this seems to be a film, well, maybe we can try doing that. And there was some kind of test that had to be shot. I prepared the set. So then I put painted shadows on that little room. Painted shadows coming from the window that would be shown on the floor and maybe on the other wall. So the cameraman arrived to shoot the tests. I had not discussed this with the cameraman, but he was totally furious. He said, I put a light here and it casts a shadow. Your shadow doesn't move. I said, well, every room has a conflicting array of shadows. One from the lamp, one from the natural light coming from, they all crisscross each other. No one gives a damn that this shadow doesn't match the light source of some other place. He wouldn't have it. And I was too, you know, you present an idea, and if they don't like it, then I'm not going to spend my life making a point out of it. So I brought the subject up again with Francis.
You know, Francis and I kind of got that whole aesthetic of doing this extra painting and stuff like that. Also, sometimes, from my end of it, you can't put the shadows where they should be. So if you paint the shadows in, you get that extra texture because you have to light it a certain way, either mechanically because an actor has to look good.
Yeah, to have the shadows on the front of the girl's house.
Creates a feeling that you can't really express. Maybe it's like there's something wrong between the relationship of the two brothers. There's something wrong with the relationship of the father with the wife that left. I mean, it's all kind of echoes of that kind of thing, but you don't want it so obvious. I mean, we're talking about it in very obvious terms now, but it's just something that you want to wash over the audience. I think that emotional feeling of the scene is more important than what the dialogue is. The dialogue gives you a little bit of information. If you really look, Francis was always so generous and so good at kind of provoking the best out of everybody.
That's it.
What he always did with me, which I really appreciated, was that he would show me the scene when he'd stage it, and he'd say, well, what do you want to do? And I would say, well, Francis, we should do this, and this, and this, and this. And if he liked it, he'd go, well, what do you want to do first? If he didn't like it, he would say, my brother Augie and I, he would tell you some allegorical story, and you're listening to it, and you go, well, maybe in that case, we should do that, and this, and this, and that. He'd go, I think that's better. He says, let's do that. And I would say, fine. The first scene in Benny's, I did these really extreme kind of close-ups and split focus things where you had a big person in the Benny's pool hall. I love that reticulated effect that you did on that one wall.
With the cracks?
With the cracks. That was brilliant.
I try to take this painter with me all the time, Roger Dietz. He was in Apocalypse in the Philippines and Zabriskie Point. It's like a writer writing a couple of lines in the script. It was writing with a visual way.
All of that stuff is so important because what I always liked about your work when I first met you doing the second unit on Apocalypse was that when you would design something, you would design the wide shot and the closer shots so that there was the kind of the compositional plan would kind of interlock. So when everything was cut together, you always felt like you were in the same place or there was the same kind of compositional strength. And I think that's really, that's really an unusual talent. I mean, it was very easy for me to compose stuff because it was there. It was there in the long shot, it was there in the medium shot, it was in the close-ups. It made my work a lot easier.
We had clocks all over.
Loved it that the interiors that you chose had really high ceilings so I could hang all my lights from the ceilings.
Like Benny's.
Benny's was great.
Talking about Benny's, it seems to me we had a fantastic shot of two actors in front of the Benny's window.
Oh yeah.
From the side.
Yeah, the process.
Didn't we rebuild that window? And
so just for a moment, things have changed. Things have changed.
Did you use more than one camera?
No. Couldn't afford to use more than one camera. Also, I'm opposed except for special things using two cameras. You don't get the intimacy because you're way back and you're using a longer lens. Maybe you want to have more background and be closer, into the person. You want to use something a little shorter, a little bit closer. Instead of, you know, going way back and then having a long lens and just having mushball behind everybody. You know, and I think the reason why they do it, you know, in television is because they have all this dialogue that they have to cover, and the writers haven't fine-tuned things, and so they want a way to cut pieces of dialogue out of it. And I just don't think that's good. That's good filmmaking. I think that, you know, you should have, what is your intention? You know, there's a time to be in a two-shot. There's a time for somebody to be in a close-up. There's time.
The choice should support the material.
Right.
And not just for expediency, just do it one way or the other.
No, it never was. But you know, I've never talked to Francis about it, but that's kind of the reason I gave myself. And when I was transferring it, I got the idea that maybe the last shot with Matt riding the motorcycle, getting to California, getting to freedom with the seagulls and everything, maybe that should be colored a little bit too. So I had the transfer lady put this very subtle kind of warm color, like a sunset, onto it. And when you play the whole sequence together with the color, I thought it worked really well. And I've always thought about all of us working together, and that is that, you know, we're kind of like a jazz ensemble. You know, the director kind of gives us the melody, what they call in jazz, the line, and we kind of interpret it. You'll do something, and that will make me respond with something, and you'll respond to my response, and the whole thing just gets, you know, gets mixed up together. I always loved all your ideas, and I always, you know, we always got along really well, I thought. You know.
We did, and I always remember it. I repeat it. I always say, I used your name as an example, you know, of being able to search out ideas with somebody who's sympathetic and comes up too with ideas. And it's not a blank wall, a collaborator.
It is. I guess, like they say in elementary school, we played good together.
Yeah.